to me, this puts a great perspective on the rankings and the importance of strength of schedule, because when you look at this, and this is from our friends over at On3, and I'll just read the top 15 teams and their strength of schedule. I mean, it's hard not to look at this and say it's not the thing that's the most forefront in the committee's mind. You've got Oregon at 43, Ohio State at 28, Texas at 38, Penn State at 35, Indiana at 106, Notre Dame at 82, Bama at 16, Miami at 54, Ole Miss at 29, Georgia at 1, Tennessee at 17, and Boise State at 77. David, when you look at this and you look at the rankings, and again, look, Indiana's still got to play Ohio State. Army's sitting down there with the 133rd ranked strength of schedule, which is really bad, but they're going to play Notre Dame, so it's going to help. I mean, what does this tell you if you're a head coach scheduling non-conference games that you have control of? Why would I ever schedule anybody worth a flip out of conference if it's not going to matter?
Because you're a football coach and you want the smoke and you want to line up toe-to-toe against a worthy adversary and all those kinds of things. But to your point of the strength of schedule is first and foremost on everyone's mind, that's because the Southeastern Conference is running a great propaganda campaign, in my opinion. So, again, the criteria changes based off what the needs are every season. If you got a couple top teams up there that are undefeated in your conference and you want them in, then we constantly hear the phrase, win and you're in. Remember how many times we heard that? Win and you're in. When you're in. Well, now that you have a couple teams that have losses, well, now the conversation needs to pivot to strength of schedule. Or if we need the other team in the ACC whose quarterback's out, then we're going to go down ballot and pick, hey, your quarterback's out, so you can't make it. So anyway, all that to say, strength of schedule is still determined by someone. Someone gets to determine a subjective strength of schedule on the teams that you're playing. And I keep asking who's deciding this?
Or what?
And at what point? And what's the final one? Do we take the strength of schedule at the very end of the year? I think that's the best way to do it if we're going to do it. So I did a little research here and I came up with the College Football Playoff outsources data that they get here from the strength of schedule from Sports Source Analytics. And we've heard that company a couple times this year. Remember when we talk about conference tiebreakers, and there's a couple different conferences that use Sports Source Analytics. But get this, guys, the data is not available to the public, as if the committee could do anything transparent to help us out here. Yeah. But, so as a result, ESPN and its FPI is a way to gauge the caliber of each team's opponents ahead of Week 13, which is what we are here. So this is coming from ESPN and FPI. Does that mean there's some grand conspiracy theory to help out teams and programs that ESPN has television rights deals? No, it doesn't. But I do think that people at home, before they start going around their office in the water cooler and spouting, oh, well, Indiana has the 106 ranked streaks of schedule, they at least need to know what companies are coming up with this.
So, but like my question is, why is the data not public? This isn't what goes on at Area 51. This isn't what we're planning to do if Russia attacks.
You can't have it.
The College Football Playoff Committee doesn't care about college football fans. Well, again, they don't have to, obviously, when you look at the numbers. But again, what is making this? And again, I'm not well-versed on the law of you have to release these numbers, but what would be the thinking behind not releasing it outside of creating a conspiracy theory? David, this is my point I was making yesterday.
It's unacceptable.
By you saying that, to me, just being a common sense, no nonsense type of person and thinker when I come to analyzing this, that creates a variant of something is up. Mm-hmm. So wait a minute, you're not going to show me the data from the what did you say the name of the company was?
Sports Source Analytics.
From the Sports Source Analytics that does the strength of schedule, but hey, I can look at ESPN,
this comes from
FPI
ESPN.
That's in bed with this. And look, I'm from Auburn, Alabama. I'm an SEC guy, but Blaine, why would you not make that data public? Who decides, guys, they don't need to see this because, maybe, just maybe, they don't even have data. Maybe they don't even have
Jake, the committee's right, no matter what it is, and you're wrong. You're wrong. No matter what the committee can close the doors. No one can get a camera in there, an audio recorder, whatever the committee comes up with. It doesn't matter what the college football fans think, college football coaches, players. It's 12 guys in a smoky room making decisions that's best for them. Best for what? Ratings and money.
And again, I'm not the biggest fan of the committee, but did the committee say don't release those numbers to the public? Is it who?
We should call them.
Yeah, who makes that decision at the end of the day?
To me, it'd feel like it would be the committee.
Look, I don't want people to think I'm completely oblivious or disinterested in strength of schedule. I do think that it matters, and if you put Georgia's schedule out in front of me or Indiana's schedule out in front of me and said the main objective in your life right now is to make a postseason invitational, like obviously I would rather play Indiana's schedule. I just hate to see us get to a point in the sport where ADs and coaches are saying, you know what, let's just schedule the easiest games possible. That's not what the sport is about to me, and no other level of football does. The Miami Dolphins can't just decide to play the easiest schedule they want. Yeah. My high school didn't get to collude with other high schools so that we could make a postseason or win the championship. I don't know why college football isn't allowing it. And to be honest, if strength of schedule is just going to be the main factor that we're talking about here, why don't we just seed people based off that? Right now, Mississippi State has the third highest strength of schedule. They're 2-8, but they have the third toughest schedule while playing Eastern Kentucky, UMass, and Toledo. By the way, they lost to Toledo. So why don't we just put them in there?
Well, no, and I totally agree with what you're saying. But I want to make sure and separate here, and I hate to come on here and air my grievances, but you keep giving us stuff to air grievances about because there's no specificity to it. So I am all for strength of schedule being in the metrics that help you get ranked where you are. One of the ingredients to the recipe. Like, I care about that. But to me, this is like asking me to judge a bake-off, yet not telling me the ingredients that went into the cake. I think it's important that we're able to judge the bake-off fairly, but in order for me to do that, I need to know what gets put into the cake. You have no idea here, and if they just say, you know what, just trust ESPN and the FPI, that's not a good enough answer for me. Why are you bouncing around from this sports analytics company that has the data that could say, you know what, here's what goes into strength of schedule. If you want me to care about strength of schedule, tell me what's in it and I will go to the forefront and I will fight with you that should be one of the main sources of information that ends up with people being ranked where they are. But when you cloak this in non-transparency, when you cloak this in, no, we're not going to release the data to the public. It's like, what's going to be compromised? Mm-hmm. What would be compromised if you release that data? Again, we're not telling you where our secret naval bases are in Antarctica. I'm confused about that.
I know it'll be compromised. It's what the committee doesn't want you to see, what you already know, guys. It's a money grab. It's a money play. They're going to make the best decision if they can squeak it through for the best ratings and the best money. So, that's why they didn't put Florida State in the playoff, because Jordan Travis might have got hurt, but they knew an Alabama team, if you put them in there, it's going to have better ratings, it's going to make you more money, which ended up being the right decision. But I'm telling you, there's a reason why they won't. It's like when Voldemort met with all those people.
I don't think it's as much about the money as it is about power. Because if you have the strength of schedule and you can look at those numbers, why do we need a committee? Mm-hmm. If you have legitimate numbers and metrics like we talked about yesterday, why do I need these people? Like, what, for the eye test? You could talk me into that. Maybe if that's one of the 4 ingredients that go in there and it's the one subjective part of it that you can look at and say, all right, these are people, coaches looking at it, whatever, we can argue that to the end of the day. But this makes it seem like, you know what, those numbers really don't matter. Because there may not even be numbers. The only numbers may be ESPN and the FPI. How do we know that this analytics company is even doing any strength of schedule numbers if you're not going to share it with the public and show it to us?
Here's a very practical question here. Let's just take Georgia, since they're at number 1 and still ranked 10, by the way, with 2 losses. I'm not sure what all the complaints are about. First off, they could technically still win the SEC and be the number 1 overall seed by the time this thing's said and done, but they could certainly be the 5th seed and host a playoff game, and they're done with SEC play, by the way.
Yep.
Right. They got Georgia Tech coming up, another out-of-conference game. But let's just take Georgia here. Let's say, that win at the beginning over Clemson. What if Clemson moves forward and loses to the Citadel and loses to South Carolina? Mm-hmm. Does Georgia's strength of schedule reflect that because your win over Clemson now isn't as impressive?
To me, it has.
Or does that not change? It only changes when you beat someone who we consider good.
See, to me, in my mind, it would have to, right? I think strength of schedule is an evolving and devolving thing throughout the season, right? Unless there's something I don't know and it's at the time when you play them, and that's the number that's baked in and it never changes. But I would think the thing that makes the most sense, it's like when we're talking about ranked wins, and we've had this conversation before. To me, what qualifies as a ranked win is when we get to the end of the season, if that team is ranked and you beat them, it should be a ranked win. I think those things go hand in hand. But Cone, to be honest with you, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Do they say, hey, at the time when Texas beat Michigan, this was Michigan's strength number, And once you win that game, that's the number, and it never changes, which would be wrong in my opinion. But as the teams go throughout their season, whether they do well or whether they do worse should go into that number. David, it's the same question. If Penn State is sitting at, what is it, 35?
Correct.
All right, and Indiana is at 106. What's the one main difference that Penn State has that Indiana doesn't? They played Ohio State. Now, I know Penn State played West Virginia the first game of the year, but West Virginia's kind of fallen off a cliff. So just by Indiana playing Ohio State, would they jump up to then having a top 40 strength of schedule? And then on the other hand, like you said, if Clemson loses to the Citadel, does that again knock Georgia down from 1 to maybe, 10 or something like that? I don't know.
I mean, Florida State has the 9th toughest schedule in the country. They've won 1 football game. Georgia, you have the first toughest schedule, and you've only lost 2. Like, some teams navigate their tough schedules differently, right? And so I just don't understand why we're getting to the scenario where strength of schedule now usurps your record. It's not just like one metric that we're considering.
And
I'm hearing people, I'm having SEC fans on social media tweet at me now, no, like our strength of schedule was tougher, so like we need to get 5th, 6th, and 7th spot or whatever for the conference. Like, again, Mississippi State's 3rd, Florida 2nd. Should we just seed it by that?
And the committee doesn't even care. Like if your schedule is bad. Look at BYU.
Who beat SMU?
Third hardest
SMU?
schedule to SMU's 86 and beat BYU.
How do you
beat
square
SMU
that?
head to head.
David, I don't
How
know.
do you square that?
How did you get to that point?
David, I don't know how you square that. I don't know how you square saying, all right, if strength of schedule really, really matters, you look at Miami at 54, you look at BYU at 53. I know both of their losses aren't great. We know what Kansas is right now, but SMU is sitting right there at 86. I just don't know how you square that Miami is ahead of them in that way. But why can't we just live in a world where, and this is why we opened with what we opened with yesterday, where you know what? It's 4 metrics, and it's 25%, 25%, 25%, and 25%. Strength of schedule, win-loss record, because losses should matter. The reason we have Indiana so high in our rankings is because they are undefeated. Them and Oregon are the only teams that are undefeated. And when we get in this argument, I can understand why Miami is in front of Ole Miss a lot better than I can understand why SMU is in front of BYU. Because Miami has 1 loss, Ole Miss has 2 losses. I'm fine with that. But I don't think we should say it's all based on this. I think it should be cut 25, 20, or if you want to do thirds, 33.3%, 33.3%, 33.3%. That's about as far as my math knowledge goes. I don't understand. It could be so much easier. And again, like we talked about yesterday, this cloak on how you get where you get to creates these conspiracy theories. And then when you dig deeper into it, and David Cohn comes on here and goes, hey guys, the sports analytics company is the one that's responsible for coming up with the strength of schedule, but they're not going to tell you not only the number, but how they got to that number. That does nothing but, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but damn it, if I look up and I see aliens in the sky one day and then I go to sleep and then I get abducted that night by aliens, you know what I'm probably going to do, guys? I'm probably going to believe in aliens.
But here's the thing. The playoff is still going to be wildly entertaining, and it's going to make a ton of money, and they're going to look at the end and say, why change anything? Why change anything?
Well, again, they look at last year and look at the games we had after leaving Florida State out and then pointed to it and said, yep. But then again, when you can't really screw it up, and I think you made a great point yesterday by saying that, it's damn near impossible to screw this up for a couple reasons. One, the parity's so good this year. You're going to have a bunch of really good teams that we actually think can win the championship, and the on-the-field product is as good as it's been. Maybe this is why they didn't think they had to put rules on NIL. Maybe this is why they think they didn't have to put rules on you can play college for 30 years now, or the transfer portal, there's no rules on it. Because at the end of the day, college football is more popular right now than it has ever been in the history of college football. Just look at it's impossible to mess up. It's like a Snickers bar. It'd be impossible for them to screw up a Snickers bar. You could put peanut butter in it, they've already done it. You can turn it into a brownie, they've already done it. You could probably put caviar in a Snickers and it would still be good. Because college football is like Snickers and Reese's. They're just good. It's just good, and it's almost impossible to screw up unless you do what the NBA did and what the NFL did for a little bit, and you get overtly political to one side. I think that would be the only way that they could screw it up, and college football is a lot smarter than the NFL. They're not going to do that. But let's get to the chat, because it's a legit conversation to be had, I think.
Let's go to Fight On Natties. Welcome to the chat, brother. He says, it doesn't matter what your strength of schedule is at the beginning of the season, because just like anything, teams fluctuate during the season. Teams that are projected to be awesome end up tanking it. So I would just wait till the end.
I agree with that 100%, but here's the problem, my friend. They're still not going to tell you what the numbers are at the end and how they got there. So to me, that's, again, I'm all for strength of schedule, and I am with you. I am with you. You got to wait until the end of the year. That's when the picture is actually painted. But if we get to the end of the year and I don't know how you got to where you got to in one of the biggest quote-unquote metrics, which is obviously not true with the committee, but it should be true in strength of schedule, then that's still a problem. The problem is we don't know the numbers that go into it, not just when you calculate it, because it's fun to talk about strength of schedule throughout the year. It's something that's why they have preseason rankings. They really don't matter that much, but we like to talk about it because we love the sport and it's fun.
Let's go to Sir Nix-a-Lot. What's up, man? I think for determining strengths of schedule, it should be a combination of final rankings and rankings at the time of the game. If you beat a team that's on a hot streak, you should be rewarded.
Well, it's, to me, and again, I don't disagree with you, but David, what is wrong with just saying, hey, listen, we are not going to evaluate or put the numbers into the computer until we have all of them and it's all done. The minute the regular season gets done being played, we are going to take all the numeric value of each team you played. It doesn't matter if you're in the Power Four. It doesn't matter if you're in the Group of Five. It doesn't matter if you're in the ACC or if you're in the Mountain West. We will take the numerical value of how good each team you played is and how they ended up, plug that into the computer, and let's get a number that we can point at and say, hey, listen, you may disagree, you may not like it, but it's even across the board. So it's we talk about, equity, right? Or treating everything even. This is a way you could do that.
I don't know for sure, but it sounded like his comment was talking about combining two things.
See, I don't think we have to do that.
Well, it is interesting, though, to take an end-of-season strength of schedule, but then also maybe weigh when you played a team a little bit. That is interesting. I'd have to think about it a little bit more, because similar to what we were talking about with Texas and Michigan the other day, part of the strength of schedule is you beat the team, right? Like you won against. I guess to put it in question form, if I was playing the number 25 ranked team, they're ranked 25th, right? And I beat them, and so I knocked them out to being ranked. Is that a ranked win for me?
See,
right? Because you beat them.
Yeah, you did.
And you're the one who hurt your own strength of schedule, right? By beating them.
As long as there's some numerical value to it and you can show me to it, I'm fine with that. I really don't like, but when we were talking the other day in our rankings, and we were like, you know what, we're going to look at the SEC standings, and you did that deep dive on, what makes a win when it comes to SEC conference strength of schedule. They didn't factor in whether you were at home or on the road, right? Isn't that what you said? Like they don't factor in whether it's a road game or a home.
You're talking about for the SEC tiebreakers?
SEC?
Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah, and again, how would you do that? How would you weigh it? Right?
Yeah,
how would you weigh it?
Do you put
you give an extra point or a half point? I don't know. But again, to my question here, and I'm thinking about this stuff in real time, so I'm trying to articulate it right. But again, to Mississippi State, right, ranked has the third toughest schedule. You're 2-8. If you had beaten a lot of those teams you played, do you still have as tough of a schedule because you beat them, and now their strength of schedule is weakened? Well, right? Winning the games weakens your opponent's strength of schedule, right?
No, it does. And you obviously compare it to all the other teams as well that are going through it. So I think there's some way that it balances out. But maybe there is some way to attach a 0.5 on if Texas went to Michigan week 3 and Michigan was ranked 18th and you beat them. You add that 0.5 there onto that game, and those things tally up at the end, and you can still use the strength of schedule of how Michigan ended up, but you add that 0.5 because they were ranked at the time. I'm willing to compromise on this, is what I'm saying. I am willing to black-eyed peas this thing and meet you halfway if you at least can just say, listen, we're going to bake this cake, and everybody's got to eat it. We're all in the bakery together. But here are the ingredients, what we are putting in the cake, and this will help you figure out with us what the outcome is. But when you do that again, and if you say we're going to take win-loss record, like in the nature of this, if you have 3 losses, you cannot get in unless there are more teams with 3 losses, and we are debating between teams with 3 losses to get that final spot. Because there is a cutoff, and I think it's 3 losses this year. Look at South Carolina. South Carolina's sitting there at what? 18? And they got the 8th strength of schedule. If we were having an argument and there were a bunch of teams that had 3 losses, and there was a 3-loss team that could get in. I think South Carolina having that strength of schedule, if it's done right, is a big deal when compared to 3-loss teams. But we're going to have this argument about 10-2 teams. That's what this is coming down to. There will be a 10-2 team that gets in. There will be 10-2 teams that get left out. It's just when you're not able to see the ingredients that go into the cake, how am I supposed to trust it when I slice that bad boy up, stick the fork in, and take a bite of it to be able to judge it? I can't, because I don't have all the information. But if we did have information that was set on metrics and numerical values, we wouldn't need people. And I think that's what it comes down to. So that's just my opinion.
All right, let's go to Mike. Mike, what's up? He says, I think strength of schedule shouldn't matter as much as strength of record because it shows at the end of the year how tough your schedule was and better demonstrates how good you really are.
So he said strength of record should be better than strength of schedule?
Correct, Coach.
Why can't we just do it evenly? Well, why do we have to weigh things more than the other? That's my thing. That's why, again, yesterday we said we're having the wrong debate. The debate should be what metrics and what values are what matters most when determining who ends up where. I am all for win-loss record. Let's do it, baby. That can be 25%. Strength of schedule can be other 25%. A subjective look at it could be another 25%, and we should figure out what that fourth metric should be, or we should just leave it at 3 and have it even across the board at 33.3%. That it would be so simple.
Let's go to Charles Sham. What's up, Charles? The strength of schedule at the end of the year does not measure hot streaks like South Carolina or the fact that teams like Florida are a different team with Lagway under center as well.
But doesn't it, though? If you're playing, doesn't it show who you're having the hot streak against by strength of schedule? And then style points, too, could be that fourth.
Well, again,
avenue.
like I said, if Nebraska and Colorado rematch this weekend, I would take Colorado.
100%.
They got crushed by Nebraska.
Yeah.
That's a terrible loss. So, yeah, I understand. You give teams opportunity to grow throughout the season because that's what championship teams do. And if you're going to win the national championship or your conference championship, you have to be better in Week 12 than you were in Week 1. At the same time, how do the games you played in September not matter? What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Well, do you want the games not to matter at all?
Well, my thing is, obviously they matter. Look where Boise State is. They lost that game against Oregon early. That should matter, not just because Oregon has done what they've done and they're the number 1 team in the country, but that's why, if we're going to sit here and say hot streaks, I don't know how you add a numerical element to that. Maybe that's the subjective part. Maybe that's the 25% on the eye test that this team, like Ole Miss right now, we're talking a lot different about Ole Miss than when they lost to Kentucky. But guess what? They still lost to Kentucky.
I'm just watching a lot of people who would otherwise in other scenarios complain about participation trophies want a participation trophy.
No, I'm
not wanting to have to go win their conference.
No, look, that should be the ultimate. That should be the ultimate goal. But I think we look at this in a more pure standpoint. I really think we do. And I think it'll just always be that way in this big business type industry.
There's one other example of that is last year, Georgia. Last year was the first time we saw more than 4 teams be able to, I think, win the national championship, and we had 7, right? You had Florida State, who got left out. Say what you will about the quarterback situation, deserved a shot to be in there. Buckeyes only lost to Michigan by 6 points. Georgia only lost the SEC championship game. You get left out. So when Kirby Smart tells the world, put us in a 14 playoff, I think we could beat anyone. I don't doubt him. I think a lot of those teams who made the playoff last year didn't want to see Georgia. But at the same time, if you didn't win your conference, right? What he was saying is put us in any playoff, anywhere on the road, we'll play whatever. I think we could win it. Well, we get to see that this year, right? You're talking about a 2-loss Georgia team. You're right now slated to make the playoff, but still somehow that's not good enough.
Well, you used the Ohio State example yesterday, which I thought was a really good one too. But this is where I think, and I know we're past the 4-team playoff, but this is where I think having some flexibility, if it's good for all parties. What if last year the committee would have said, you know what? How about we do this? How about we're going to have these 3 teams in? If the argument at the end of the day, it really came down to what? Georgia and Florida State, right? Or it was Alabama, Georgia, and Florida State. But what if we had a way to say, you know what? How about we say, hey, Kirby Smart, and hey, Mike Norvell, how about y'all two? Let's meet up. Y'all two play each other. We got time before this playoff kicks up. Would you agree to do that? I think both coaches would have agreed to do that. But
that's some stuff Dana White would do.
Yeah.
Dana White would do that.
And then you talk about a play-in game for the playoff? Because that's what we're having at the end of the year. Don't get it confused. We are having play-in games right now.
Yeah.
Just like we see it in the NCAA tournament, where you have those games before the official tournament kicks off, when it went from 64 to 68. Well, you got those 4 teams that are, and typically it's like North Carolina A&T's playing Texas A&M Corpus Christi to see who's going to go get destroyed by UConn. But it's still like those playing games are awesome, and you could have it at an even higher level. But I think it's a great conversation to have. Hey, appreciate you guys checking us out. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on, because it's getting thick really quick. We want you to be along for the ride.